Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Thursday, June 17th, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or in the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever discovered. These tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner, it'll take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. That book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? That chapter of that book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Worksheet, or vice versa. It began as the worksheet process. It's a tool I've used for over 17 years now to effectively improve the quality of my life and relationships and turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that we've each been gifted. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple click on download a PDF file, print it off, copy it, and use it as often as you'd like. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness, and you'll see the glowing heart icon. When you tap on that, you can download the app, completely free and private app that gives you access to the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game. And that is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process or given testimonials about how the active application of that process has changed their lives for the better. We hope you do that soon and often, and then if you have questions or comments, give us a call. That's the prime reason for us being here for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, to be of service. And the call-in number is 563-999-3581. And if you call that number and press 1, it puts a little question mark by your phone number, and I can hit switch, announce you by your area code. We're also doing the Course in Miracles workbook lessons this year, and today is the 168th day of the year. Today's lesson reads, Your grace is given me, I claim it now. The commentary, a little shorter than the last few days. It says, the Creator speaks to us. Shall we not speak with the Creator? The Creator is not distant. The Creator makes no attempt to hide from us. We try to hide from the Creator, and we suffer from that deception. The Creator remains entirely accessible. Creation loves its offspring. There is no certainty but this, and yet this is enough. This suffices. The Creator will love its offspring forever, and when his mind remains asleep, he loves him still. And when his mind awakes, he loves him with never-changing love. If you but knew the meaning of this love, hope and despair would be impossible. For hope would be forever satisfied, and despair of any kind would be unthinkable. The Creator's grace, his answer is to all despair, for in it lies remembrance of his love. Would he not gladly give the means by which his will was recognized? His grace is yours by your acknowledgement, and memory of him awakens in the mind that asks the means of him whereby its sleep is done. So it's a very, very powerful statement, and lots of goofy words in my humble opinion, to say, when you ask, you'll receive. This is always there. And so the asking doesn't bring it to me, the asking clears the part of my mind that's blocking me from seeing what's already there. The energy of creation that gave rise to each and every one of us, that keeps our heart beating and our food digesting and our breath moving without us thinking about it, is always there. So when my mind chooses to ask to see God, to connect with God, to see the love that sustains us all, my mind is stepping into the willingness to put aside the roadblocks to seeing what's always there. So today we ask of the Creator the gift that creation has most carefully preserved within our very being, within our hearts. It's sitting in us, waiting to be acknowledged. This is the gift by which the Creator leans to us and lifts us up and takes us into salvation, that final step that we can't do, right? The conscious logical mind that we think is us isn't capable of even comprehending all of that, and ask to be in connection to my true nature, the world that you have created, that I'm a part of. Pam Grout's lesson 168 is titled Update to Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. She quotes David Cameron Gikandi as saying, "You are already wealthy, but you have been taught not to experience your wealth." Pam writes, in 1937, when Napoleon Hill wrote his now classic book, Quantum Physics was still in diapers. Einstein, of course, had posited his famous theory of relativity, but quantum physics didn't completely understand how it worked. Quantum physicists didn't completely understand how it worked. To tell you the truth, they still have trouble making sense of the crazy quantum world that is changed by simple observation. As physicist Richard Feynman famously said, nobody understands quantum mechanics. However, we do know that thoughts produce energy, much like invisible radio waves, and they provide the building blocks for our life experience. The updated title to Hill's material says Lesson 168, Grace is given, I claim it now, should be this: think and be rich, as in now. I do not have to wait for my good. Time is irrelevant. The ego prefers to keep this on the down low, but source, capital S, source, is entirely accessible all the time. In the quantum world, I am connected to everything. I already have all the riches I could ever imagine. They exist right now as probability waves, but that's the problem. I don't imagine them. I focus on what I don't have. This lesson assures me that despair would be impossible if I had any idea how much I was loved. So, back to Napoleon Hill. He advises people to come up with a date for acquiring a certain amount of money, sometime in the future. But the trick in the quantum world is to, quote, be rich now, close quote. To claim, as this lesson promises, my inherited riches and my blessings today. So that's our lesson today, and Pam Grout's commentary on the Course in Miracles lesson. Your grace is given me, I claim it now. So, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And if you call that number and press 1, you can help shape this show. You can give us some sense of direction. What should we do? Should we pick up talking about the conversation in the past couple days? Should we talk about Michael's rant yesterday about medications. Every medication is a disease disguised as a cure. Should we talk about the chapter of the book I'm reading from Gabor Mate, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and all of the research about what actually causes addiction? 563-999-3581. What would you like to talk about today? Susan, think you're in the air?
I am. I have a ton of questions. And it's funny you mentioned Michael's talk about medications yesterday, because that adds another one. But I love this lesson. And one of the things I like the most is that there's a quote, "Our faith lies in the giver, not in our own acceptance." And so he also says you can go right up to the edge, but I take the last step. And that step I have felt all along is I don't know how to do that, or I don't know if I'm near enough to do it. But the idea that God will take that step is such a comforting thing. But that's not a question. That's just a statement. But I do have some questions. Do you want to say anything before I start on the questions? I know I'm sort of just, my mind is exploding with several things.
No, go ahead. Let's have a question.
Okay, well, the Course in Miracles says we don't know why we're upset. I'm never upset for the reason I think.
Correct.
Yet we have this worksheet, and Walzak says too, first of all, acknowledge that you are upset. I love that because there are so many levels of upset, and sometimes I'll just feel a wave of a little something, and I don't even pay attention to it. It's like picking my battles. I think, why should I pay attention to that? But he's saying, pay attention, pay attention. But then, so we say to ourselves, I am upset, and we name the type of upset. For me, it's usually anxiety. And then we name the trigger. Now, here's where the Course comes in. It says we are never upset for the reason we think, and yet we are invited to name a trigger and set a goal. And it's true that something shifts if you go through, and I'm wondering if just the attention you give yourself to that upset and that trigger and the process has a healing factor built right in. Even if we still don't know, we can get a benefit. And that is a question. I mean, how does that all fit together?
Well, if you have a hunch that it's healing just for me to engage in giving myself that loving attention, that's probably a really solid hunch.
Yeah.
Excuse me a minute while I clear my throat. So if you have that hunch, it's probably a real solid hunch. You're a therapist, you're a mother, you're a grandmother, you're a sensitive individual, you're intelligent, so probably makes really good sense. What's the absolute truth of it? What percentage of my healing comes simply because I focus positive attention on my situation? I don't know. But I think it's probably a really good bet that that's true, that there's some healing that begins to happen, or I open the way for healing simply because I'm going to be not bulldoggedly using my conscious logical mind to try and solve the problem, but I'm looking with compassion upon this process that I'm experiencing, thought, emotions, etc. So
the
next,
Course in Miracles, okay, Go ahead.
Next question.
Is the Course in Miracles then, is there room to assume that we are never upset, I'm quoting, we are never upset for the reason we think? The worksheet leads us to the reason. That our normal thought processes may not lead us there, but this worksheet could. I know these questions are kind of useless in their own way, but it's just what my mind's been doing today.
But here's the idea. It's not the worksheet that leads us there, right? It's if we use the steps in the worksheet, we ask to be shown. It's some higher wisdom. It's an insight. It's an intuition. It's an energy resonance vibration that's outside the conscious logical mind. The worksheet doesn't do anything. You remind me of a time when I had this support group that used to meet in person for 16 years, and now we don't because of the coronavirus. But and there was a woman who came to that group for a lot of years, and almost, she never did a worksheet in the group, etc. And her report was that she didn't do them outside of the group either. And so finally one day she decided to do a worksheet in the group in front of other people, and it was powerful. She was crying and shaking and sobbing, and we did EFT tapping, and somebody got behind her and rubbed her shoulders and said it's okay, and it was just really, really cathartic and all this great insight. And when it was done, she said, "Wow, look what that worksheet did. This is a powerful tool." And I said, "That worksheet didn't do anything." She says, "What do you mean?" I said, "You've been coming here for 2.5 years. The worksheet's been in front of you on the table every week. The worksheet hasn't done anything." The worksheet is not a powerful tool. You are a powerful being, and any tool that you decide to use effectively can have a tremendous impact on you for good or evil, depending upon what you're willing to direct it to do. The power lies somewhere outside your conscious logical mind. The truth is, it's probably inside the truth of your being, your awareness, your soul, whatever you want to call it. But it's not that this worksheet in absolute truth is so powerful. If it were, we could just start mailing these worksheets to people, and the world would transform. Good thought, though, right?
Yeah, I get it. Right.
Put this under your pillow at night, and your life will get better.
Right. Oh, my gosh. Well, that was quite a build-up for that woman. I mean, she was getting ready for 2.5 years, and so then she did it. It seems amazing, but that's a good lesson, too. In fact, it helps me with my son and his son. Yesterday we went for a walk after the show, and Michael had suggested that they go over the videos that Michael had done, the retreat videos, and that they do worksheets. Well, I suggested the worksheets, and they both went, "No, I don't want to do worksheets. I'm not going to do worksheets." So I had to do some work, giving up the goal of showing the video and doing worksheets, getting my kids to do
and it's beautifully drawn and in full color. And if you imagine a corner that's formed in a box, and on the left side of the box there's a square, and on the right side of the box there's a circle, and floating between them is a cylindrical object that's cut off at just the right width, so it will fit through the square if you push it to the left, and it will fit through the circle if you push it to the right.
Got it.
Okay? So when you look at it from the left at the perfect angle, it looks like you're looking at a square. And when you look at it from the right at the perfect angle, it looks like you're looking at a circle. They're both right, but neither one is the full picture. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
So take a breath, and let's examine what the brilliant and well-read and very well-intentioned Dr. Michael Ryce said yesterday with such energy and emotion, and some people would say triggeredness. What he said was, research papers have been quoted as saying that, and now whatever comes next, you have to have that preface, right? This is not God sent down from the mountain with Moses. Everybody who takes medication dies 20 years earlier than they would have if they didn't take a medication. So please, take that off the table. Here's the preface to the statement. Research papers have said. They may be accurate, they may not. If they're accurate, all they're talking about is a statistic about averages. It's never about one single person. It's like saying, you know what, if you smoke, you're much more likely to get lung cancer and die early. On average, people that smoke say, well, almost everybody alive knows somebody who's 70 or 80 or 90 years old and smokes like a chimney and has since they were 13, and they outwork everybody around them. Right? So it's not about an individual person. And the truth, in quotes, that Michael was spouting yesterday has a certain validity from the perspective of the overall statistics. And the basic message Michael was giving is absolutely right. There's nothing in these medications that heals anything. They provide a treatment to suppress symptoms, but they aren't a cure for anything. But there is nothing in absolute truth that says somebody like your husband was going to live to 105 and now he's going to die at 85 because he's been on these meds. That's just not, there's nothing of capital T truth in that. So please, take that off the table.
Okay, thanks. I will.
When Michael Ryce, with all of his reading and all of his passion for the work he does and all of these skills, when he gets on one of those, what they would call from Abraham Hicks, they call when Abraham has one of those monologues, they call it a rant. And it's a loving term. It's not a pejorative. It's not a negative term. So when Michael gets on one of his monologues and he's got all this energy and he has all this emotion because he knows there's something better than, and he gets very impassioned, he would call it. Some people would say triggered. He says, no, I'm just passionate. There's emotional energy behind the words, and it's easy for people to mistake it as capital T truth. And then to try and extrapolate out from a study of, 7,000 people, or we did a review of the literature, which includes 400,000 people over 70 years, and the average person who's on medications doesn't live to the life expectancy by an average of 20 years. But there's no one person they're talking about there. So take that off the table, breathe in and soften a little. There are many people who have lived a full life on medications. It's just like some people have gotten, tooth implants and their life hasn't fallen apart and their health hasn't dropped off a cliff. And all of these things that people talk about, there is a truth in them, but they are not the truth. So your work in this thing that we're talking about with your son and your grandson and not wanting to do worksheets, or they're having a perception or a conclusion arise in their mind that says, wow, doing a couple worksheets is a really tall order. If you interpret that as bad or wrong or scary or hopeless or helpless, then you can do the worksheets that will help you see the root of that negative emotion arising in you, because that negative emotion arising in you is not caused by your son or your grandson or anything going on in your world today.
And that's what the Course said. We are not upset for the reason we think. Right.
Exactly. And some other teachings deep across a lot of different spiritual traditions recognize that it's the interpretation I place on life events unfolding in my internal experience that is resonating a connection to a negative emotion that is tied to a negative belief about myself from my past. That's why I'm upset. The Bottom Line Observations has a one that says, whenever I have a negative thought about myself or someone else, or a negative emotion, I can instantly know three things. Number one, it's a lie or based in a falsehood. Number two, it's about the past. It's not about the present moment. Number three, if I take an action based on that negative thought or emotion, I'm going to make my current situation worse. I can know this absolutely every time. It's just plain logic. I can see, I can't expect that my life will get better or any situation I'm dealing with will get better if I choose to dump negative mental or emotional energy into it. Well, that just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about the idea that it's not about the present moment? Well, because if something really important is happening in the present moment, most of us have been through things like this, emotions don't arise. Action arises when I'm paying attention to what's going on in the present moment. I use the example he's in front of me. If I have anger arise because I saw the person run the red light and I want to go punch that driver out, that's an old anger. If I have fear come up in me, that's an old fear. If I have overwhelm come up in me, that's old stuff. If I'm a fairly competent adult in the moment and I'm letting the truth of the moment act on me, I'm in action. If I have logistical skills, I start calling out to people. You do this, you help this, you do that. If I'm a paramedic-type trained person, I start applying pressure to bloody wounds, extracting people from bad situations, etc. There is no emotion. We interview hundreds of thousands of people who've been through these things. The emotion isn't there. Action is there in direct response when the person is directly interacting with the present moment. There isn't any emotion. So we know that when you have negative emotions come up, when you want a situation with your son or your grandson to be different, that it's an emotion that's being created in you by the interaction between your perception and the judgments and interpretation you're making about that perception.
In fact, one of the insights I had was extremely encouraging. I remembered being a teenager and having awful school anxiety, getting up in the morning, dreading a math test, or just dreading the day, so anxious I couldn't eat, standing at the school bus or riding my bike to school, whichever the weather allowed, and feeling as if I just being in total misery. Well, here I am at my age, having had a great life, and I'm still having a great life. I survived that, and I didn't talk to anybody about that because back then nobody talked about that sort of thing. So I look at Charlie, and here we're going for a walk, and he's doing his obsessing, his OCD obsessing. And I'm remembering what his doctor said, and I'm remembering what I read in a book about how you don't reassure, you don't reinforce, you don't take part in the fantasy, but you love them. And I'm walking along feeling so anxious on his behalf, and then doing this worksheet, I realized, wait a minute, he is suffering, I imagine, not suffering any worse than I was back then, and I'm okay. So he can be okay. I know that's a pretty lame, roundabout way of consoling myself, but it really helped to remember that. And the next time I see him, I could, go ahead.
Okay, I would offer, and Michael did this to Jeannie yesterday in the show.
He did a few things.
She said something about, and sometimes I will rewrite my worksheets if I think my handwriting is sloppy. and that's bad.
Yeah.
And he stopped her and said, there's an old belief in, power person thing, and you should. So I'm going to do the same thing to you. This is not lame. That is not a lame way to do anything. That's a wonderful insight. That's an absolute
very
truth.
Helpful.
It may not be what you would like to have for your grandson, but you're turning it into this, oh my, life and death, he's not going to survive kind of panic for his grandmother, and that's not really helpful, and it's not necessary. Right? He doesn't need emotional CPR to survive this.
Yeah.
Michael, sometimes this just flashed into my head. I'll share this. Michael likes to tell the story about if you have a friend, this is in his patter about the difference between right versus wrong thinking and right versus not right for me. And it's not just semantics. There's a powerful difference here. So you have a friend who calls you up and says, hey, I'm going to rob a bank this weekend. You want to come with me? And Michael says, no, thanks. That's not right for me. Now, I don't know in that moment if it's right or wrong for the other person. How can you say that? People might get hurt. Well, if you think people might get hurt, then go ahead and call authorities and alert them to the fact that you know somebody who might pull a bank robbery. And then you've done what you can to protect people. But the point he makes in his lecture is that for all you know, that person may need the run-in with the law, the events that will happen if they get arrested or go to jail or face the judge in order to move through their next challenge and grow personally, spiritually, whatever. You don't know what another person needs. All of these great spiritual traditions say this. Way of Mastery has us recite, I don't know what my brother or sister needs. I don't know what anything is or is for. There's an exercise in the Way of Mastery that says just spend 10 or 15 minutes looking at various objects in your world, pick one up and say, you know what, the truth is, I don't know who invented this stapler. I don't know where the metal came from that's forming this stapler. I don't know how they made the plastic that's in the plastic part of this stapler. Just to be in the presence of the observation, the truth of the observation, pull us out of the fantasy that our conscious logical mind creates that says we know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Right.
We really don't know. I love this thing from George Carlin. George Carlin says, all these people talking about, is it kind of how we're going to kill the earth, and that's crazy. For all we know, the earth just invented us so we could create styrofoam because the earth needed styrofoam for its next level of evolution. We don't know anything.
Now that seems like a stretch, but I get your point.
Well, the point is we don't know, right? I mean, even now they're finding that there are worms and there are creatures in the deep sea that are ingesting the plastic. We have no idea what it's going to lead to. I'm not saying that we should just go ahead and use our stuff. The only point I'm trying to make is we have a mind, this conscious logical mind, that we've been trained to elevate to the level of master, and it was never intended to be there. Right? It's intended to be a very faithful servant. And as far as our mental, emotional, and I'll go so far as to use the word spiritual lives and connections, that conscious logical mind is intended to be the faithful servant, not the master. But there is this guidance system in us. It's our negative emotional states. It's our emotional states, positive or negative. And as I've taken to saying in the intro recently in the shows, these tools help me use any negative emotional state as a part of the infallible guidance system that we've all been gifted. How do you do that? Well, instead of deciding that my negative emotion means someone or something outside of me is wrong and needs to change, I use it as an alarm to turn the focus inside and figure out how is my mental or emotional process in error right now? How am I projecting something from the past onto the present moment, the way the Course in Miracles would have me say, I'm never upset for the reason I think I am. And when I quit trying to figure it out and just ask to be shown, an entirely different process has the potential to kick in and show me stuff I can't see any other way. So, have we got you completely off track and distracted from what you were going to ask?
No, you didn't. It's great. It's all just, I just have so many questions around this. For instance, a week or so ago, my son went with a friend to take a hot yoga class. Well, I would never in a million years have thought that he could be persuaded to do such a thing, but he did. And he came home drenched in sweat and said, that was just gruelingly hard, but I feel so good. I'm going to do that every week. Well, he hasn't done it because anticipating that much struggle to feel really good. And he said the feeling good lasted pretty much into the next day, and he had a better time at work. So this leads me to a question about how exercise fits in. Exercise could be said to be a pill, insofar as it is not directly working with the problem, but it certainly seems to lift the level of upset so much that the upset may even seem to have gone away for a period of time. Can you say something about that? I mean, exercise as avoidance or...
Oh, yeah, you can use anything as avoidance. Absolutely. You can use anything as an avoidance. It doesn't mean exercise is an avoidance. But, before you said exercise as an avoidance, I was just going to talk about everything is energy. So in this energy system that's designed to move, we call it a body, but it's an energy system that evolved to be able to move, to walk, right? I mean, it's really designed for walking and lifting and climbing things far more than it's designed for sitting.
Oh, yeah.
So, if I have an energy system and it has an intended purpose and I never use it for that purpose, it's not going to function as well. But
and that'll show up in your emotional.
Right. It'll show up in my physical, mental, and emotional functioning. But then go to the next thing. You said, can you use it as an avoidance? Absolutely. You can use anything as an avoidance, just as you can use anything as your drug of choice or an addiction. Right? But the whole thing I was going to talk about from the, Gabor Mate book on From the Realm of Hungry Ghosts is the research, the really solid research about how substances are not addictive by themselves. And, they did observations of people who came back from Vietnam. An incredibly large number of people were absolutely, quote, physically addicted to heroin as Vietnam veterans. And they came home, and guess what percentage of them are still on heroin? Or stayed addicted to heroin? A tiny fraction.
Wow.
A tiny fraction. And so that people, now that's not what people wanted to look at. So the people started looking at, how addictive is it? And let's do studies with rats and put rats in cages and give them the choice of food or cocaine and heroin. And, oh, my gosh, look at these rats. They choose, heroin until they starve to death. Oh, my gosh, that's powerfully addictive. Oh, well, it's garbage, right? Because when they started to look at how many people who were Vietnam veterans that got into heavy use of heroin, the numbers were phenomenal because it was available over there. It was practically free, and it was available like water. And these people were in a situation where the reason they thought they were going over there, the purpose for, fighting for their country, et cetera, they got over there and found it's all a lie. And now they're in this life and death, torturous jungle situation. The stressors were off the roof. The pain, the suffering was off the charts. So they used the heroin. Well, guess what they found? You can look up the rat park experiment. Guess what they found with rats? Rats are social creatures. If you isolate them in a little cage and give them the choice between food or a powerful drug like cocaine or heroin, they're miserable in that cage alone. It's a tiny little cage. There's no other rats there. There's nothing for them to do. They're sitting there thinking, oh, my gosh, I can't fulfill my purpose in life. I don't have a connection to God, and they get depressed, and then they use the heroin. Self-report from most of the rats in the study. The big reason I use heroin is I lost connection to my God. I can't fulfill my purpose in life. So they decided to build a rat park. And they built this rat park that was maybe 100 times bigger than your usual cage. And they filled it with places for the rats to run and jump and swim and play. And they put other rats in there. So now they've got a social interaction pattern going. And then they give them the same option, food or the drug of choice. Guess what they do? They eat food. They ignore the drug of choice. They even did it with rats that they had they'd made them physically dependent upon the heroin and the cocaine, and they gave it up.
Wow. That's amazing.
So what we know is while these drugs are making physiological changes in the human physical energy system, we also know that's not enough to keep a person addicted. There's a lot more going on here than just a drug substance.
That's really wonderful to know. Yeah.
Okay, so I got to ask you because somebody else put a hand up, and our deal is if somebody else puts a hand up, we wait to see if there's a good transition period, and then we turn them on. Is there another question or comment you wanted to make before I open up somebody else's microphone?
No, that's a good. I have a few more, but that's a great stopping point. I can save them.
Okay, so here is area code 901. You're in the air. Who do we have? Spinning wheel of electronics. Is that Jill?
He chose to leave, but he's been made the boogeyman.
Area code 901. You're in the air.
So we say, "Oh, the devil made me do."
Okay, so they are not responding. So, Susan, we have 10 minutes left. Do you have another question?
Yeah. God does not know darkness is one idea. And yet, Richard Rohr, in an article today, sometimes I read his meditations, he says, God contains our shadow, even while not knowing it is my question. I know this is just intellectual fooling around, but maybe just both are true. That was sort of a question. Or what do you think about that?
I don't know. Why do we want to know the answer to that question? Remember what I asked several times when you go into that big philosophical thing? I ask, how would it make a difference in your life later today or tomorrow? Because if it would make a serious difference, and you can tell me how, then maybe we can play with some other aspects of it. I have no idea what the answer to that question is. But if it's coming from a place that says, okay, all right, then let's not do that here. Let's save that for some dinner conversation and a glass of wine and friends and chit chat. Okay, what's that?
Why is such a premium put on happiness and joy? Because I fall short on it a lot. So, there's a whole worksheet could be done on that, of course. But is it possible to just substitute the word peace or calm Why do you have to go
absolutely. You don't have to. You can do whatever you'd like to do, and choose well, right? Because what you choose with your thoughts, you're going to start creating the experience of with your mind. I would suggest that you listen to the Q&A from the Way of Mastery that has to do with the difference between joy and happiness, or joy and pleasure, or whatever. It's a wonderful thing. We've used it on the in the support groups several times. And the short version of it is this. By the way, these words only mean what you want them to mean.
Got it.
So for you, happiness might be the same thing as the definition that Q&A gives to the word joy, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they talk about joy as being this enlightened state, connected state, awareness of your true nature, awareness of your connection to everything. It's more like a deep contentment and or peace. And so you can have joy even when you've just broken your leg. So there's physical pain. There's physical pain, but you're not running off with your mind into some series of horrible thoughts about the future, and so there's the difference. Happiness or pleasure, as they talk about it in that Q&A, is just like pain, in that it is a set of physical sensations that we experience in accord with the movement of energy. And so it's time limited, it's going to have a beginning and an end. Whereas the joy that they're talking about, that contentment, that peace that we can have access to, is in the eternal now. And so it doesn't ever have to end. And it can come from, and we can enjoy it by focusing on our true nature and having that awareness of connection. So in that sense, the way they describe it, that happiness business can be just like another drug. It can just be like an orgasm. It can be like, a certain number in my bank account. Hoarding, exactly.
Okay, got it. That's good. Thanks. Good. I need just a wider set of expectations or hopes about that. That's good.
Or definitions for the words.
Yeah. So I listened to that, as I told you. I listened to the Walzak interview, which was so good. And one thing he did in there, he admitted he had tinnitus. And my first thought was, company in misery, and he's an enlightened man, although he insists if anybody tells you you're enlightened, run the other way as fast as you can. But the fact that he had tinnitus, I'm just reporting that it just felt good that somebody at that level of wisdom still has ringing in his ears.
Well, he's got more than ringing in his ears. He had cancer, and he's got a host of other problems that he hasn't cured yet. And he said in the interview, and of course my fantasy is I'll get rid of this one and my body will go back to the way it was when I was 40 or 50. And he said, and he laughs because he knows that's a fantasy.
That's funny. I listened to that section twice and I couldn't make out the words, and you just clarified them. Yeah. It went by in a way I couldn't hear it. So thanks. I didn't know what that was about.
Well, it doesn't matter who I've studied, these great enlightened teachers, whether it was Meher Baba or Krishnamurti, or I used to have that fantasy that, when people get really enlightened, when they get in touch with the deep truth from the Creator, etc., then their body radiates this light and everything heals, and the kind of it's a kind of fantasy that I've had for years that goes along with what Dr. Michael Ryce thinks is going to happen when he gets all of his energy lined up. His body's just going to be just like it was when he was 20. But the more I studied these great teachers over the years, And these spiritual people, some people say they have been the incarnation of the Creator in physical form. Every one of them has had aches and pains and traumas and car accidents. And so, it isn't. I remember I just flashed on a Greg Braden book where he went to this pilgrimage, and he'd been there for so many years. The oil from the torches falls on the ground, and they walk on it, it hardens. It's just crazy how old this is. And they get to this room in this cave, and here is this monk, and they describe him as looking like a mummified human. His skin is like leather. It's hanging off his bones, but he's the wisdom keeper, right? He's like the closest thing to the incarnation of the deity that created everything. But the body is a withered, shell. So I think it's unproductive at best to think there's something wrong with you because you've got a physical ache or a pain. And that as soon as you straighten out your spiritual and emotional issues, all your physical aches and pains will go away. Look at Byron Katie. You were talking about that. Here's a woman who's had this great, intense, enlightened experience, and still she's going blind. Right? Well, does that mean she misunderstood the enlightened experience and she's got it wrong and she needs to change it, and as soon as she does, her eyesight will come back? No, she went to one of the world's best physicians or surgeons for that eye condition, had the surgery, and then her sight's back.
I love it. That's so great.
So watch what you do to yourself.
Yeah.
It's not that it's right, wrong, good, or bad, but watch the impact, the consequence on you when you judge yourself as not doing it well enough yet and not knowing what's right from wrong, and you must have some problem spiritually that you need to correct because you've got an ache or a pain. Or if it's useful to look at those connections and make a mental adjustment, great, do it. But when you do that, you go to do it and you end up with more negative emotional states, perhaps you want to choose again, like Diedrich would say. All right. Well, thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate the call as always, and I'm going to mute you so we can do our transition. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Welcome, Jeannie Ryce.
Thank you, Dr. Tim, and thank you for that link. I haven't been on the website to get it on there yet, but I will. That is awesome. Thanks.
All right. Blessings.
All righty. Have a good one.